This is the world's easiest bread. I know that's a big statement, but I don't think it's an exaggeration. I cook a lot, but I've always found it very confusing and intimidating making bread, especially working with yeast. Also, I don't like working with very wet doughs. It's something that I found very frustrating. So, this recipe was a godsend because it allowed me to try my hand in working with something with yeast and with the wet dough, but it's in the simplest way possible. It is not complicated at all. You begin this recipe by preheating your oven to 450 degrees, and you put your Dutch oven in there while it's preheating. That way it gets hot. I don't have a Dutch oven. I have like a covered Corningware dish. I'm not really sure what it is, but it's covered, and I put the top and the bottom in the oven to get hot while I'm mixing the dough. This dough is just the flour, yeast, salt, and water combined in one bowl, and I have this wooden spoon to scrape the sides of the bowl. I'm what you might call a path of least resistance kind of cook. If something is too hard or if it's too complicated, chances are I won't do it. Don't get me wrong, I like making new and unusual things, but I have to be in the mood for it and also have the time for it. So I have a collection of recipes that are my go to, tried and true things that I know work. On a busy Thursday, I'm not going to want to try out a new recipe, so it's really nice to have these things in your back pocket. After you have mixed your ingredients together and there's no more large pockets of flour, scrape all the dough into one lump in the center and cover it. I use a plate and that works fine, but you could use a reusable cover or you could use a plastic wrap. It's up to you. You can leave this covered on the counter for at least 2 hours, or you can put it in the fridge for up to 2 days. But if you do put it in the fridge, let it come to room temperature before you cook it. So now that this dough has had time to proof, which is really just a fancy word for rise and bubble up, we're going to work with the dough. So I lightly flour the surface that I'm going to put the dough on, and I'm flouring my hands to help me scrape this dough out of the bowl. I used to have a flexible bench scraper that made this part of the recipe a lot easier, but unfortunately it broke, so I'm just using my floured hands. The reason why you scrape the dough out onto a floured surface is because you need to shape the dough and deflate the dough. The way you shape the dough is you take the bench scraper and put it underneath the dough and then fold it up over on top of itself. You do that, half a dozen times. That's what it deflates it, but also it gives it its shape. And now you have the seam side, which is the part that's facing up right now. And I'm going to take the dough and I'm going to flip it over so it's seam side down onto the parchment paper. The reason I put it on parchment paper is because it's easy to put in the Dutch oven that way, because a Dutch oven, remember, it's hot. It's been preheating in the oven for a while now. Once the dough is in the Dutch oven, you cover it with the top and then you put the whole thing in the oven at 450 for 30 minutes. And then you take the top off and you cook it for an additional 12 minutes. Every recipe I have goes through a grid of 6 questions that I ask. The first one is it tasty? And yes, this bread is very tasty, especially when warm with some butter on it. Now, is it the same as an artisan sourdough bread? No, but it's a fantastic quick bread and it's great for people who are new to baking. The next question is it easy? Yes, it's the world's easiest bread. The question after that is it quick? Well, it's quick for bread. Bread is going to need some time to proof and it's going to need time to cook. So it's not the speediest thing, but it's the speediest thing for bread. I ask myself, can I freeze it? And yes, you can. You just have to slice it beforehand and then put it in a Ziploc bag. Then I ask myself, can I make it in bulk? And you can, but you'll need a lot of equipment to do it all at the same time. The last question I ask myself is, how much did this cost? When I sat down and did the math, I found out that this cost me 44 cents, which is a great price. If you were to go to a grocery store or a bakery to buy this, that would be a $5 loaf easily. Now, keep in mind that I buy in bulk, so when I buy flour, I buy a 50-pound bag of flour. But even if you just bought regular flour from the grocery store, not in bulk, you would still make this at a great price. This has easily become one of my favorite recipes, and if you try it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.